The SR Rarity, why the hell are you here? We all know how gachas work. There's a set amount of rarity, simply ranging from 1 to 5 stars, so some games such as Blue Archive or Precon have only a 1 to 3 star rating, though the following concepts still apply. The higher the rarity you are, the more powerful you are, but also the more harder you are to get. The 1 star raise can serve you on a dirt platter, you're almost forced to get them, while the 5 stars, you might have to shell a pretty pain to get. But in between these two rarities, we get into some weird territory. We can honestly merge the 1 to 3 stars together into one jumbo low rarity, as for a lot of gachas, you kinda have to use all of them together. In fact, in these kind of games, it might be harder to get the 1 to 2 stars compared to the 3 stars. But there is a definite discrepancy between the 4 and 5 stars of gachas. Gacha games use 1 to 3 stars as the filler of gacha, making sure that getting a high rarity character feels a bit more satisfying. They provide what I would call the bare necessities, the food, water, and shelter with the gacha spear. They are fairly solid units that can carry a player through the beginning of the game. Or they could be bad. Will they be the best in their role? Absolutely not, but they provide the beginning player with something solid to take with them until they find a better unit. Depending on the game, there's also a cheaper raise compared to a high rarity unit, making them the best option for players starting the game. 5 stars are a completely different story. A gacha game uses a 5 star in one of two ways. They can be a unit that has very interesting gameplay that, while not optimal in all scenarios, they're at least very fun to use and won't hold you back too much. The other option is being the pinnacle of what role they are supposed to play for that game, the best of the best unit. Think of it like this: the low rarities are a fairly old used card. They at least get the job done. They take you from one place to the other. Sure, it might be breaking down, missing the engine, but hey, it's functional. The 5 stars are comparable to a Lamborghini or a sports car. They're a flashy or strong car that do way more than is actually needed to complete your IRL dailies, like going shopping or killing 10 enemies. So that just leaves the question: what the hell do these 4 asterisks mean? 4 stars are left in this really murky area. They aren't made for beginner players, as they tend to be slightly more expensive to raise compared to low rarity units, and they're harder to get. You can't expect every player to have all the 4 stars. In fact, sometimes they can be generally worse to raise compared to a low rarity in terms of raw value. But they also tend to not be super comparable to 5 stars, as it's even inferior to them in order for the 5 star to sell. So what's the point of 4 stars other than to flood the gacha? Yeah, I can answer that. Let's look at some gachas and see just how their 4 star rarities compare. FGO, the gacha which out of the ones I played has probably the most well-rounded 4 stars in terms of their power. They manage to strike a balance between somewhat outclassing low rarity units while not being super comparable to the 5 stars in the game. But most of them aren't that interesting. A majority of the 4 stars are really only comparable to the 3 stars in their fellow 4 stars, such as Tristan with David, Dan with Georgios and Leonidas, and Martha with Asclepius. Very few end up actually being on par with their 5 star counterparts, such as Kentucky Rider or Heracles. Some of the 4 stars do have unique gameplay that isn't really similar to another 5 star, such as Lakshmi Bai, Hot Wheels, or MASH. But yeah, a lot of the 4 stars in this game are fairly similar to the 3 star equivalents in their roles, and end up being the slightly worse raised due to not being able to get their MP levels high as easily. Something to note though, specifically with FGO, is party cost, where the higher the rarity the unit is, the more expensive it is to put them on the party. This gives 4 stars a pretty good niche as a semi-cheap unit to put them on the party if a 5 star is too costly. The EXP in this game is also somewhat ranked by star rating as well. The 1 to 2 star EXP is absolutely useless outside of very early game if you want to overlevel, while the 3 star EXP is good for burning into mana prisms, a useful currency for beginners. The real money is at the 4 and 5 star EXP, where they're actually useful for leveling your units, with of course the 5 star ones being the big ones to use, especially since they become easier to grind. This game also has foe cards, which are items used to increase the stats of your units by up to 2,000 points in either attack or HP. However, only the 4 star foes can be used to raise the unit's stats from 1,000 to 2,000, while the 1 to 3 star foes can only raise up to 1,000. Craft essences are a different story. Most people only use the 5 star ones, and only a few of them at that, with a few exceptions for the low rarity ones. Command codes are a joke. Arknights, just pretend that everyone's actually 1 star lower and everything makes sense. I would say their SRs have a much harder time standing out compared to their low star and high star equivalents. Yes, some have unique gameplay such as Liskarm or April, who don't have an easy comparison compared to most of the characters, but everyone else is either outclassed by their 4 star equivalents outside of niche cases, or somehow outclasses their SSR equivalents. Like outside of favoritism, there's no real reason to generally use Cess over Shiryuki or Salem over Purishim, and the same applies to Nightingale over Telopsis. I would note that Arknights likes to make their 5 stars very experimental. Anytime they drop a new archetype to the game, they're typically a 5 star and thus have unique gameplay that can't be easily compared to someone else, such as Tequila or Cantabile. There are also SRs that compare, but don't completely outclass their SSR equivalents like Neural Rosaria or Project Red with Phantom. Arknights does have an extra mode aside from their standard gameplay, that being integrated strategies, a roguelike game mode where you have to slowly build your roster of units throughout the game. Each operator has to be purchased using Hope, with their cost depending on their rarity, from 1 to 3 stars being completely free, 4 stars costing 2 Hope, 5 stars costing 3, and 6 stars costing 6. The 4 to 6 stars are at a low level and can be upgraded with the cost of course, more Hope. In this mode, 5 stars tend to be quite weak, with the exception of a few units. Most 5 stars tend to be either too overkill for their extra cost compared to a 4 star, or whose role can only be done by a 6 star. Now, I haven't seen if IS3 makes that situation any different, since as I'm writing this, the game mode comes out about... Yeah, Arknights is one hell of a mixed bag when it comes to their middle of a pack rarity. Fire Emblem Heroes uses their 4 stars in the they are bad kind of way. Yeah, since 5 stars is so incredibly common in the game, anything below that kinda ends up just being really unsteady units whose only use is being burped for skill fodder. You can raise their star rating, but it's generally not the most worth thing doing. Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail uses their 4 stars in a very interesting way in that they are the low rarity when the 3 stars don't exist. I mean, there are 1 to 3 star weapons, but let's be real here, they're just here to fill up the gacha and exist outside of like 1 or 2 weapons. Genshin does have 4 stars that, while they don't have 5 star equivalents a majority of the time, their overall impact on the team regardless of rarity is huge, such as Jingqiu or Bennett. Also, they designed their 4 stars to require a good amount of copies to go from very mediocre to actually strong, which can be kind of a pain due to how their 4 stars are rated up. But you might be thinking, what about the 4 star food? Well, a lot of the 4 star food absolutely does not compare to either the low rarity food or the high rarity food. With the 4 star food, while they will outclass the low rarity food in terms of raw numbers, they're so much more expensive to make a majority of the time that the 2 to 3 star foods end up just having a greater value overall. And of course, the 5 star food has higher numbers compared to the 4 star equivalents, so who cares about the 4 star food? Artifacts are a joke, there's no real reason to use a 4 star artifact over a 5 star one unless you have literally anything else to replace it. I have not played Star Rail, so we discussed a lot of different gachas that deal with their S-star rarities in their own special ways. Epico's 4 stars are generally close to their low and high rarity counterparts, Arknights is wild, Fez is bad, and Genshin doesn't care. But what do I think S-stars should be? As I discussed, S-stars are stuck in this weird place. It's not the easiest task to sell a character that outclasses their low rarity counterpart while it's being outclassed by their high rarity counterpart. I personally believe that the SR rarity should be the experimental branch for gachas, kinda like how Arknights does it. We already have the basic low rarity units that can get players through the general content of the game, and the high rarity units that are supposed to be the best in the game. So having the SR rarity be used to test certain features or interesting skill sets that might be applicable to high rarity units could give them a purpose to exist. Though I would try and make them more comparable to 5 stars out of the box so that there is a reason for a newbie player to raise an SR rarity unit at the beginning of the game. So in conclusion, what should a 4 star be? Funny.